Hi, everybody. Welcome officially. My name is Hala Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's live author reading, Mindfulness. We'll be hearing from Carolyn Flynn, reading from Boundless, A Road Trip to Rejuvenation, released on December 21st, and Lucinda T. Green, reading from Pathway to Freedom, Applying the Teachings of the Buddha, released on January 11th. Both authors' books can be purchased both from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website. That's at atmospherepress.com/books. And I'm also going to put links to both of these books in the chat so you can directly check those out there. At the end of today's event, we are also going to have time for audience questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or both authors, go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. Please do stay muted for the duration of the event, but feel free to use the chat for praise and comments in addition to questions. One last note is that we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we're always looking to read new submissions, so you can submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Carolyn and Lucinda today. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Carolyn Dawn Flynn. Memoirist, novelist, and essayist Carolyn is the author of the memoir Boundless and 7 books of nonfiction. Boundless was longlisted for the 2021 Dyslexia International Memoir Prize and the 2022 First Pages Prize. Her work has been published in Fourth Genre, Under the Gum Tree, Arts and Letters, the Colorado Sun, the Tampa Review, the Whitefish Review, Montana Prize for Fiction, Albuquerque Journal, Sage Magazine, Albuquerque the Magazine, and Wild Frauen. She's a single mother of Ukrainian Irish American twins and was the longtime editor of a life-giving magazine called Sage. In her TEDx Women Talk, Tell a Better Story, Live a Better Life, she has inspired countless others to live their sacred yes, even in a world that may split open. As the writer Mariel Rukeyser once famously said, if one woman spoke the truth. She now lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she is a hiker and a pilgrim and a desert dweller who is an appreciator of horizons, which I think is just such an excellent sentiment. Today, we'll be hearing Carolyn read from Boundless, in which she reimagines the empty nest, turning her keen insight and signature poetic voice to the deeper questions about the stages of women's lives. Set at the intersection of youthful coming of age and the vanishing horizon of middle age, Boundless offers powerful questions about what it means to become and ultimately provides a roadmap for recovering emotional agility. Carolyn, take it away.
Okay, thank you. What a great introduction. It's wonderful to see all of you here. This is fun. I hope you enjoy this hour. And I hope I'm part of you enjoying the hour. So thank you guys for coming, and thank you, Hala, for hosting this. I'm just going to start off from the very beginning, Chapter 1, Dead on Arrival, and it takes place in January 2001. We are a streak of red on a desolate horizon. The twins and I are speeding down Interstate 25 in an ambulance. Above us, sirens scream, filling my ears. To the city, we are a jagged flash to underscore a blood-red sunset on the Sandia Mountains. To us, we are inside this blanche-white sarcophagus of tubes and wires, racing down a highway, trying not to die. My babies are 18 months old. They are rushing us to a hospital. I say this in my mind to sear it into me. This is happening. Through the scratch crackle of the radio, voices of dispatchers and paramedics speak in a frantic staccato code. I grasp that they are trying to figure out which place will take my babies first. Loveless Northeast Heights, University of New Mexico with its child trauma unit? Finally, a decision. Loveless Gibson, the dispatcher says. They are ready to receive them. Loveless Gibson, where the twins were born. I draw Grace a little nearer to me. Both babies are cold as quartz. When I look into Paul's eyes, they are gray flint. His pupils are disappearing into a tiny black hole. Don't leave, little stars, I whisper. Two paramedics monitor their heart rates and their oxygen, green and blue lines missling across two screens. They give them Narcan. The one with the glasses turns to me and says, "That's what they do. Ash, activated charcoal, and Narcan, the drug they give people who overdose on opioids. They will fill them with ash like they are urns." All I knew was I had arrived at the babysitter's house to pick up the twins and found ambulances parked at the curb. When I crossed the threshold, I saw one paramedic holding Grace in his lap as another flashed a pin light in her eyes. Paul was tethered to a heart monitor, sensors pasted to his bare chest. "They climbed out of the playpen when they were napping. I'm sorry, I am so sorry," the babysitter had said when she greeted me at the door. She told me the twins had ingested a prescription morphine derivative that she had left uncapped on the nightstand. "I don't even know for sure they ingested it," she added, her afterthought, and nothing I could hear. My babies were descending into deep sleep right before my eyes as though under the ghost spell of another shore. The tender, rose-infused cheeks that had just that morning nestled at my breast were crumbling into ashes so light they could slip through my fingers. Before I could spring into panic, the babysitter clasped my forearm, pinning me into place. "Stay strong for the twins," she said. "Right now, they need every ounce of you." In a flash, I had snapped into fierce warrior mode. No time to cry, only seconds to fight for their lives. The ambulance surges forward. "What happens?" I asked the paramedics when we get there. That morning, my husband had said he didn't want to work on our marriage. "We must do everything we can to save this," I had said. "For them." I pointed to the crib they shared. "This is not worth saving," he said, and stormed out of the house. I had gathered the twins, their lunches, and their sippy cups. I had barred the tears into a frozen place behind my eyelids and dropped the twins off at daycare. Do they pump their stomachs? I wanted this poison out of them. I wanted to believe modern medical technology has solutions for this. "With the activated charcoal," the paramedic with the glasses says, "they don't pump their stomachs. The Narcan intercepts the receptors in the brain, and the charcoal is like ash. It absorbs the narcotic. It has to pass through." Paul grows cold to the touch. His skin feels clammy. We are still 12 miles away. 15 minutes. I reach to swaddle the blanket around my son. "Stay awake, little stars," I whisper to him, then turn my face to Grace. "Stay alive. It's worth it." Arrived. A team in blue pounces on my babies. Seconds only, then Narcan, activated charcoal, heart rates normal. They are still conscious. "They're dead." My husband bursts through the automatic doors. "No, they're alive." I look away. I reorient my gaze to the twins. Paul with a glassy, gray-eyed stare. Grace's eyelids flutter. Just then, Grace jolts up from her gurney and erupts a spew of ash. My husband and I stand in awe, like we're watching an ancient volcano on Santorini. Just 2 years ago, we'd been on our honeymoon in Greece, walking the tunnels of Akrotiri. Frescoes, pottery, a once teeming marketplace, all preserved beneath the ash. The center of the island had fallen into the sea and disappeared. The ring of land that remained had been buried in ash. For the first time today, our eyes meet. We immediately turn away to look at the same thing. Grace heaves sheets of cinder and lava from the back of her throat. Her plum-colored baby blue bum play suit turns black, leaving a swath of charred earth. As I dab at her chest with a white towel to absorb the slag, I think it is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Paul never spews. He just absorbs it. So I'm going to skip ahead to the next part. Let's see. This jump cuts to 2017. So 1 minute, they're at the brink of death and dying in my arms. The next minute, they're getting ready to go off to college. So this chapter is called Raucous Departures. It takes place in 2017, and it's chapter 3. In the right here, right now of the year of Where Will You Go, The twins and I stood in a calming silence as the sun descended around us. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, the most mysterious element in our domain is sky. Its presence is everywhere, these questions too, all around us and above us, prisms that hold light and bend it to a mountain. The sky is our ally because it has much bigger fish to fry. It's not that the sky doesn't care about our problems, it's just that our problems are so solvable from its perspective. First, we looked east as a watermelon pink washed over the mountains, glowing on the peaks and trickling down into the deep blue folds of the foothills. Then we turned west as the sun blazed through the clouds, yellow as a field of Tuscan sunflowers. It is a sunset in two movements. Sitting on the west-facing porch, I pointed to the evening star as it rose. Hello, meet spring, a senior year. Hello, meet the razor edge of the future. Tell me more about MIT, I said. Hello, meet hope. Hello, meet worry. Hello, meet the keen edges of every conversation we have now. They won't tell me they are frightened about the future. They will tell me they are being brave. They won't tell me that most conversations with me cancel out their conversations with their father and vice versa. They won't describe how our sharp words hold them in a delicate maze. For the past 2 years, we had been churning out college essays, including 2 killer applications, one to MIT, Paul, the other to Tulane University's neuroscience program, Grace. Some 17-year-olds sought validation through the mirror of college acceptance, some through unlimited sexual conquest, or both. Some through the inner guidance system, hopefully provided by a loving parent, even 2. The twins seemed to be a mix that was dominated by loving parent, but could be especially validated by MIT said yes. I've been calculating the odds about whether I have a chance, Paul said. If they only have, say, 2 slots for students from New Mexico, that means I'm competing with 17-year-olds out of a pool of a population of 2 million, about 4,000 people. Not that many people. If we assume most of the applicants are from the Albuquerque-Santa Fe corridor, that's the 17-year-olds out of only 1 million people, about 10,000. Fewer people. Then we have to earn the ACT score to get it. Small pool. He turned to me. I think it's me and 6 people. And you probably know them, Grace said. Mom, I really want this, Paul said. Want this. Really want this. This was the unvoiced desire. I had already heard beneath every essay he'd ever written. Many friends and sisters will say how remarkable the twins are at achieving things. Some who are mothers of not studying teenagers will lament that their own seniors are not trying harder, not willing to work through the confusion of the future. I cannot voice the real stimulus because it would mean disclosing our poverty. The twins want a better future because they know where the edges are. They know they could tip over. There's a reason that 2 of the past 5 presidents have been sons of single mothers. It's because their single mothers knew that at any moment their children could fall off the edge of the earth. Once I had proclaimed our house, the Be Who You Are house. I had mainly said this to walls and doors, my voice most likely shrill, trying to penetrate the gypsum and wood that they had put between me and them, just so they could think this one out. Come 9th grade, the twins had fortressed their rooms to find out who they were. Mainly, it seemed, through YouTube and GitHub. Before that, it had been One Direction, thankfully, only briefly, and Powder Toy, the online physics game. Before that, Coke or Pepsi, which one are you? Nerf gun club obstacle courses we set up in that park in that time long, long ago when the twins still wanted to live in an analog universe and not Minecraft, where their screen names were Banana Sky and Snowfire. So in a flash or 2 later after their birth and near death at 18 months, we had blasted through free falling at the Tower of Terror in Disney World when they were 6, trekking up the spiral towers at La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona when they were 9, to this. Now 17 years had passed since these 2 creatures had emerged from a hole via the modern Western medicine phenomenon of the cesarean section, so that they were born 1 minute apart, really only 45 seconds. They had spent nearly every day of their lives together, except for 4 weeks, Grace had spent in a summer college prep art program at Lesley University, living in a dorm right at the doorstep of Harvard. And then Paul and I had whisked ourselves to Boston for her art show and to tour Harvard, MIT, and Berklee College of Music, just to see if we saw who we were, if we saw a future in any of those places. We'd been having these conversations, just not with each other. The twins had been furiously writing college essays with me as their editor. They'd been having conversations with gatekeepers, an array of people eager to peer into their future, expecting them to describe their lives ahead of living them. It would be fantastic if you got into one of your reach schools, I said. But remember, what you're really trying to do is build a happy life. What you're really looking for is the place where you can be who you are. I delighted in their reaching for it. At the same time, I knew they were reaching for the end of us. I found something animating in this potent desire of theirs. It was a sense of being alive and not dead. I turned my face to Grace, who had engaged in the patient and delicate work of crafting a path for herself, when Paul's path in computer science had been so painfully obvious. She had chosen neuroscience and music, a major in psychology that would lead her to the work where her interests in integrative therapies, such as nature immersion and mindfulness and music, could forge a path forward and make her decent money. Paul anticipated the conversational pivot and said, I think you've done an amazing job of figuring it out, Grace. I agree, I said. You took the time you needed to center and dig through the confusion. Knowing that I risked the scatter, I said, I'm proud of you. I threw myself into this risky territory because I love their wit and their brilliance, their thirst to create a life that's uniquely their own. My role as mother has been Vistagather and sounding board as I've listened to a ferocious accumulation of preferences. What they don't want is denounced loudly. What they do want is announced early and often, but always changing. Not always do they say what they really want. Often, if I fail to calibrate the time limit on these conversations, they can tilt into sudden nihilism. All things family can be scorched into existential meaningless by a single errant word. Thank you, Mom, Grace said, taking the compliment, but I don't have time to think about this now. From Grace's room, I heard as she ran through Riptide by Vance Joy, an urgently strummed song that pushed all this away with force. From Paul's room, I heard the flow of Canon in D on guitar. Sitting alone on the porch as night avalanched into the house, I sighed my night music. You knew this year would be painful. My personal vow had been to be emo-diverse, to feel it all, even the conversations that end in annihilation. Without meds, unlike most of America, just feel it. All the highs, all the crying on the floor moments, with meditation and an ounce or two of faith that there was something higher than me, something that thought with a better mind and activated a deeper heart. I call her all-loving God, and I mean the all-loving part. I also mean the her, because I need God to be whole, both he and she, wise protector and fierce nurturer. Mindfulness practice had trained my brain, rewired it. So had the pure, unrefined love of motherhood. It would be hard to say which had built more resilience. Senior year was building to a crescendo, and all three of us knew what was on the horizon. Two of us were leaving. The twins had emerged from their mid-teen cocoons and announced the answer to who they were. Someone who goes to college somewhere else. Clearly, it was time for a road trip.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I think there's a lot of exciting things to discover going forward into the book based on where you just left us there. So I just put the link to the book one more time in the chat for everybody, so do be sure to check that out. And then in the meantime, we're going to go to our second reader for today, who is Dr. Lucinda T. Green. Lucinda began meditating at age 16 in 1967 and never stopped. Having lived and studied in India and Sri Lanka, she's the founder of Rocky Mountain Insight, a Buddhist Dharma and Vipassana center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She's the creator of the Enlightenment deck, a deck of cards helping you learn universal truths, guiding you in your spiritual practice, and designed to be inspirational. In Pathway to Freedom, which is what we'll hear from today, Lucinda explores the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, loving kindness, compassion, and the dissolution of duality. It describes the highs and lows, pitfalls, challenges, and insights you are likely to encounter on your spiritual journey. We'll hear more now from Lucinda herself.
Well, I would like to offer a bow from my tradition to Carolyn and catch our breath. So this is Pathway to Freedom, and I'm going to be reading selections from chapter 14. Equanimity and the Five Hindrances. What is equanimity? Equanimity is even-mindedness, a non-reactive mind and heart. Is there ever a situation when we don't need equanimity? How often do we lose our equanimity or simply not have it in the first place? How can we cultivate it? How much of the time do we react in knee-jerk fashion, devoid of equanimity, to other people, be they children, co-workers, spouses, friends, or strangers? A plethora of mental and emotional states that are far from equanimity can arise in our daily lives. The Buddha spoke about 5 obscurations of mind and heart, which he called the 5 hindrances, and challenged us to closely observe, identify, and eradicate them. Okay, I'm not seeing myself there.
Oh, that's okay. We should be able to see you okay. It might just be the way your settings are set.
Okay. They are the 5 hindrances. 1, greed. 2, hatred, anger, and ill will. 3, restlessness, worry, and anxiety. 4, sloth and torpor. 5, skeptical doubt. All of these states compromise equanimity. No two things can occupy the same space. Such is true with equanimity and the 5 hindrances. Evenness of mind and these states cannot coexist simultaneously. Let us explore how each of these states causes us to lose equanimity and how we might regain equanimity by applying antidotes to the hindrances. Suppose you're tired from lack of sleep, overwork, or stress. When you experience the depletion of your physical and mental resources, it is easy to become irritable. Sustaining an evenness of mind, an open heart, and a clear, wieldy, malleable, imperturbable mind is next to impossible at these times. The first principle of philosophy is to state the obvious. Common sense antidotes to exhaustion include getting enough rest and pacing yourself. An antidote straight out of the practice involves 3 elements: clear comprehension, balanced energy, and effort. Clear comprehension means letting your attention reside where your body is. If you are driving the car while your mind is miles away, you may miss seeing the red light that you just ran. When you're driving and are aware that you are driving, your attention is residing within the activity at hand, and you are more likely to see the red light. So what do balanced energy and effort mean in this context? It is possible to let your attention reside where your body is and be tense. For instance, you may be driving with awareness, all the while gripping the steering wheel such that it leaves marked impressions on the palms of your hands. Strained effort produces tension. Tension produces tiredness. Sustained tension of the body or the mind produces exhaustion. A balanced effort means maintaining a continuity of consciousness, a steady stream of sustained, relaxed awareness. Sustained energy cultivated through the combination of appropriate effort and clear comprehension results in a buoyant, resilient, and uplifting feeling in the body and in the mind. It is challenging to generate a steady stream of awareness applied to all the activities of the body and mind throughout the day. Here's an example of how you might begin to address appropriate effort and cultivate snippets of clear comprehension that will foster balanced energy. Perhaps you are deep in thought, working at the computer. If you do not work with the computer, pick another familiar, repetitive activity. Take a moment and apply a light touch of mindfulness to your body, noticing if any muscles have become tense. Pay particular attention to the muscles in your face, your brow, and your jaw. Has tension crept into these areas? Shine the light of your attention specifically on the locations where you are holding tension. Once you have done so, relax these areas. Here's a simple way to do this. Exaggerate the tension in these areas. For example, contract the muscles in your face by pursing your lips, mashing your eyebrows together, creating a deeper furrow in your brow. And then release. Release all the muscles in your face. If you've noticed tension creeping across your shoulders, raise them up as far as you can, bringing them as close to your ears as possible. And then let go. Release your shoulders, letting them drop down and further down. Enjoy the melting of tension sensations that accompany this release. Take 3 deep breaths and then return your attention to the task at hand. Repeat this practice throughout the day. Doing this practice enables you to build the elements of awareness required for clear comprehension, balanced effort, and energy. Equanimity is present when the combination of these 3 are working together harmoniously. As you continue the examination of how the hindrances compromise equanimity, you may notice that when the door of irritability has opened, restlessness, worry, and anxiety are not far behind. When we are rushed with too much to do and not enough time, we may find ourselves moving from one task to another without completing any of them. We have lost our focus and become scattered in our attention and in our efforts. At this time, we may lack spaciousness in our minds and hearts. Our minds speed along, jammed with conflicting needs, desires, and tasks, each one requiring our undivided attention. When this happens, do your best to finish each task, even while having numerous interruptions. Break down tasks into bite-sized pieces and acknowledge completion of each bite. Restlessness begets restlessness. So it is with the mind. If you expend energy chasing your thoughts, the endless race that no one wins is in full force. Worry and anxiety in and out of meditation beget worry and anxiety. One-pointed focus is the traditional antidote for this play of monkey mind. Come back to the breath. Take a few deep breaths and place total attention on the full cycle of the breath by noticing the beginning, middle, and end of each breath. Continue to notice this full cycle of breath 3 to 10 times or however many times it takes until you are once again absolutely present. Your attention is located in your body and your mind is focused and clear. Proceeding in this manner curtails an obsessive and compulsive train of thought. Step off this train headed nowhere and stand on the platform of breath awareness and mindfulness. Now I'm going to skip a little bit. Does meditation practice mean you're never going to feel tired and irritable? Certainly not. However, with mindfulness, you can become aware of these states as they arise and take care of your body, speech, and mind so as not to cause an avalanche of anger, hatred, or ill will. With awareness and wisdom, you can say to yourself, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I best not open my mouth right now. I might regret it later. Let me take a deep breath. Simple as that. Saying when you're in relation with someone, give me a minute, or let me give that some thought, or I'll get back to you on that, are invaluable phrases to use when you feel off kilter and out of sorts, or simply need some time to sort out your priorities before taking on further commitments. Noticing these states, being aware of them, and intervening upon these tendencies is a practice. When you implement this practice as the need arises, you are able to prevent the hindrance ball from rolling and gaining momentum. Instead, you're able to act and speak on behalf of your own well-being and the well-being of others. Practicing the progression of awareness, recognition, and intervention reduces rather than increases suffering. This is the pathway laid out by the Buddha for the cessation of suffering. The conclusion of this chapter. Remember, an even mind is a non-reactive mind and heart. Our spirituality takes place within our daily lives. Put these steps into practice. Awareness, recognition, intervention, apply the antidote, reduce suffering.
Thank you so much, Lucinda. And thank you for kind of like walking us through these processes to give us a taste of what it is we can be thinking about and working on and what we can really get from diving into your book. So again, I put that link to the book in the chat. So another one I would love for everyone to check out. And at this time, we do have time for our audience Q&A. So if you've got a question for one or both of our authors, you can type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. To start us off, we do have a question for both authors. This question is, what inspires personal growth in your own lives, and how do you translate that into your writing? I'm thinking we could go in reading order. So Carolyn, do you want to start us off with this one?
What inspires personal growth? Well,
Yeah.
Father Richard Rohr, who's with the Center of Action and Contemplation here in Albuquerque, one of the things he says is it's through great love and great suffering that we change. And I think that my book is about great love and great suffering. And as you go along, you'll find out I make a whole lot of mistakes. And so I am the cause of much of my own suffering. But I think that that is it. When the uninvited experience comes in, I ask, what is here to teach me? Because I believe life is your teacher. And if you're ready for the growth, the lesson will show up.
Yeah, and I love this idea of, obviously you make a lot of mistakes because where is the growth going to come from otherwise? And I think that kind of is a nice way to frame that when mistakes so often just feel like failure. So I love that sentiment. Lucinda, what about you? What inspires the personal growth in your life, and how does that translate to your writing?
Well, the personal growth in my life is greatly fueled by the Dharma, is greatly fueled by the inspiration and the motivation to understand the universal truths of reality and how to live aligned with the universal truths of reality, that everything changes, that sometimes suffering arises as a cause of that, and that essentially we are all one united family of life, that we're not independently separate solid selves. And that fuels my spiritual and my personal growth on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just this ongoing process, right? And I think that can be really beautiful, especially depending on how you're approaching that. We've got another question. This is for Carolyn. Was Boundless a departure from your other nonfiction writing? If so, do you have a preference for a specific type of writing?
Uh, I'm laughing because I am a reluctant memoirist. But you know what keeps happening? I keep getting pregnant with memoirs. I don't know how this is happening. I am really, yes, it's a departure, but that was the departure was from self-help spiritual nonfiction, which is what the first 7 books were. But at a certain point, I said, I want to be a literary writer. I have always been that, but I thought of myself as a fiction writer. So I did one of the best decision I ever had made in my life was to have my 2 children. Second best decision was to go into Spalding's MFA in writing program. And Jody, one of my mentors, is here today, and she was amazing. But that was my intention to go into literary, to go into fiction and memoir. I actually was still trying to go to fiction, and they said, "Hey, we've got slots open for the first year for creative nonfiction. You want to do that?" And I said, sure. So I keep getting reeled back into this memoir thing. But I describe myself now as a fiction writer and a memoirist.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little selfishly happy to hear that because I feel like I had a lot of the same experience as a younger writer, and still now I kind of feel that it's like there's something about memoir that just pulls you in. So fascinated to see that parallel. Question for Lucinda, I believe. Is there a path or pattern to personal growth, or do you believe it depends on individual experiences and lessons?
I think it completely depends on personal experiences and lessons. I think our conditioning, from our upbringing, from our culture, from our ethnicity, there's so many aspects to our conditioning, where we grew up, the geography of where we grew up, that I do think that we carve out our own individual path and make discoveries from doing that, from following our heart, and from working with the challenges that we all have in our lives, each one of us. So yeah, I think it's, and then a path can emerge that helps stay in the spirit of working through everything.
Yeah, it's like the concept overall, it obviously applies across the board, but how you go through that is going to be so individual. And I think that's just such an interesting thing to explore. Another question for Carolyn. How, for you, does the actual experience of writing a memoir differ from your experience of writing a novel? What are the trying moments for you in each experience?
That's a great question. Um, Yeah. Well, what I wrote is called a narrative memoir. This is another thing I keep getting back into creative nonfiction and explore memoir because there's just been an explosion of subgenres. But by narrative memoir, that means it reads like a novel. So I actually kind of drew on my novel writing experience to map out. I wanted it to have a plot like a novel, and that really helped me. And what I was able to do is sort of because of my mindfulness practice, I would say, okay, I've got it all mapped out. It's got an outline. It's got a exciting, I think, climactic event. It's got the third act twist. It's got the returning home with the elixir. It had all those things. And I said, now all I have to do is stay present to what that experience was. I believe that memoir is kind of the art of it is in the selection of the details. The wonderful thing about memoir is that all those things have happened and you can select from those details. The wonderful thing about fiction is that you get to make it up, you know. And for me, I love that part. That's why I keep trying to get back to fiction. I love that making it up part. I love sort of doing the character development behind that. But the hard part about fiction is that you have to make it up. You go, I know she's going to do this, but I don't know how she's going to get there. Where is that scene going to happen? So that to me is kind of the challenge of fiction. But usually if my character has already started talking to me and I hear that voice, I just trust the voice of the character and I go where that character's going.
Yeah, I want to also comment. I love this idea of the narrative memoir and kind of fusing these elements of creative nonfiction and fiction. I think that's really evident also in the work. So I think that's really interesting to hear you speak on that. Question for Lucinda. Please say a few words about your antidote to skeptical doubt.
Skeptical doubt is when you doubt yourself. It's when you doubt your own ability, when you doubt your ability to meditate. Um, it shows up in many forms. And the traditional antidote is inspiration, and there's so many sources of inspiration. There's so many inspirational books where you have a book of sayings and you just open up to anywhere in that book and you take that as your guidance for the day. So inspiration, I think trusting yourself and trusting the the path of unfolding. Sometimes we just end up in places or with experiences we never expected. And then we can doubt, well, wait a minute, I thought I'd already dealt with this, or I thought I'd really worked through, some issue. And then here it is right in my face. And so then we can doubt, wow, has all the growth work I've done, has everything I've done been in vain? No, not at all. Just meet and greet each situation, and sometimes noble friends and noble conversations. Having a conversation with somebody can get you back on track and feel inspired and kind of reconnect you to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes back to that kind of, I mean, it's a mindfulness practice again. So I love seeing how that all ties together. We've got one more question. This is for both authors. How many drafts did you go through before you decided your manuscript was finished and ready to start submitting to publishers, agents, or wherever? Carolyn, you want to start us off with this one?
Okay, sure. I would say that the first time you're writing your story, you're telling the story to yourself. So you really know it. The second draft is the story's on the page and it starts talking back to you. The third pass is you're telling it to the reader now. Mirabai Starr, who's also a really great spiritual teacher, she has a great book called Wild Mercy. That's one of the best books about the divine feminine that I've ever read. But she's also a writing teacher, and she says that you need kind of three different passes at it. She describes the first as the raw, wild beauty. And she says the second is when you're really trying to make sense of this as a story. The third pass is the alchemy. So I think the writer has to go through those stages first. I had three developmental editors. My third one was with Atmosphere, but I had two before that at the Lighthouse Book Project in Denver. And those two people really just advanced the book so fast. And that's what I wanted, was to advance it so fast. One, it was painful to be writing it, so I kind of wanted to not be writing it for 10 years. So those two people helped me. So I think that that's probably a good rule of thumb. You know, let yourself have those 3 drafts, work with really, really good developmental editors who can see your vision and hold your vision with you and help you get to that vision. How did I know it was done? I kind of a spiritual when I was hiking in the foothills at Sandia, and I was doing that thing that writers do where you hang on to your manuscript and you're like, not ready. Like you're still trying to perfect this or perfect that. And finally, the sun was setting and the mountains were turning watermelon pink. And I just heard, it's time to bring your book home now. It's done. So there's a point at which that you know it's done. Some people say maybe a simpler way to think of it is that when you're ready to just abandon it. Don't abandon it. Don't put it in a drawer, but you're just ready, like it can go away now. It can go somewhere else. It can be something else. So that's my answer.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's a lot of great nuggets of wisdom in there. Thank you. And Lucinda, what about you? Similar process, maybe
Well, thank
different?
you, Carolyn. That was really helpful to me. I really appreciate that. I'm a teacher, and it's fairly common for Dharma teachers to put together a collection of their talks. So this is a collection of talks that I've given live, and so it was just something that I wanted to gather together and get published. For me, deadlines really work well. And there was a conference coming up of Women in Buddhism in Denver, Colorado. So I wanted to have that book in hand to go down, to take to the conference. So I thought it was fairly complete. But as I gathered all together my talks, I realized I had more writing to do. And so I was in a situation where I devoted 6 to 8 hours a day for like 2 months to bring it to completion to meet my deadline. And I did have an editor, not an architectural editor, but I worked with an editor and really, that really cleaned it up. And it said everything. I asked him too. He had a publishing company. And I asked him, how do you know when it's done? And he said, when you've said what you wanted to say. Have you said what you wanted to say?
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a lot in there that I need to hear a lot more. And I think there's a lot of writers out there who could stand to hear all of those pieces of
I,
advice. And
I have one
yeah,
more
go
thing
ahead.
to say that is a discipline. And it's not a discipline I'm very good at, but I'm working on another book and I'm doing well with this discipline, which is to not edit as you go. Do not edit your writing as you go. It's very difficult for me. Do that first step, the raw, just get it out there, and that's a second stage. That's a second step.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lucinda. And thank you to Carolyn and Lucinda for your wisdom here. Of course, also for sharing your books with us, those kind of sneak peeks into them. Thank you to everybody in the audience for joining us as well. I think this was a wonderful way to celebrate these authors and these new releases. And speaking of new releases, don't forget that you can order Boundless and Pathway to Freedom from the links in the chat. I'm putting them in there one more time for everybody. And please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, sign up for our email newsletter, or submit a book manuscript of your own. You can submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and just let us know that you attended today's event. We'll look forward to hearing from you, but until then, that's it. So have a great rest of your week, everybody.